Brightest Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm so excited. This is part of our In Solidarity initiative, and Mastercard has been partnering with iHeart to produce these priceless conversations with me. And we're bringing together thought leaders, financial experts, and business owners to sit down and kind of share your expertise and share your stories. And so we're talking today about the role that financial literacy plays in building and maintaining wealth and sustaining legacy in the Black community. So today we have Nicole Turner, who is the Senior Vice President of Technology Hubs at Mastercard. Welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. And, just full disclosure, she's from Brooklyn.
Yes, Brooklyn's in the house.
In the house. Tanya Van Court, the founder and CEO of GoalSet.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Who traveled from Brooklyn today also.
I sure did. Straight from Bed-Stuy.
And then you guys should all know Stacy Tisdale at this point. She's my she is my co-host for Wealth Wednesdays, but also the CEO of My Money Media. She's a financial expert, author, and broadcast journalist. Hello, Stacy.
Hi, Angela.
How's everybody feeling today? Because we always go to start with that.
I'm feeling excited, empowered. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, the pre-conversation was amazing, just talking about different goals, finances, being patient. But Nicole, let's start with you as we're doing this conversation. Financial inclusion is one of the key pillars of Mastercard's social impact strategy and In Solidarity efforts. Can you talk more about Mastercard's commitment to financial inclusion? And also, we always talk about the tangibles, the programs that you have that support it.
Sure, of course. When I think about Mastercard and the commitment that we have to try to close the racial equity gap, tell me, it's been something that's been important that we've been doing for a long time. I love the fact that not only do we talk it, but we walk it. We understand that in order for us to be successful in our business and what we do, closing that gap is equally important, especially when it comes to financial inclusion and financial literacy holistically. And so when we think about the programs that we have and some of the partners, and we'll talk later with my friend that's here from GoalSet, we understand by supporting and working with these partners, not only do they help us continue and improve the digital divide that we need to say, how do we close it? But then also, how do we make inclusive products in order for us to do this as well?
And, I just want to put this out there first, too, Nicole, just your background and how you got to Mastercard, because I love for people to know how everybody got to where they are today as well in this space.
Yes. So before I joined Mastercard, I used to open up healthcare facilities and long-term care facilities in underrepresented communities in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and in the Bronx. And it was important that the agency that I worked with at the time said, you know what, we're looking to put 300 and 400 jobs in the communities. We realize that there's a change that's happening. But in order to do that, use your HR background to hire people from the community and upskill them. In order, when you upskill them, not only do you help the economic community, but you also help the real estate. And at that time, they were doing a lot of programs from a low income housing perspective, this company I was working with. So not only were we bringing jobs, but we also was giving them mortgage grants as well.
I think it's important to know all of those things because we do care about the people who are behind these programs. And so when we're talking about Mastercard, just to see how much you care about the community outside of this and what got you here today. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Tanya, let's move on to you. Let's talk about GoalSet, what GoalSet is, the need that you saw specifically in the Black community, and how GoalSet is helping to close the wealth gap as well.
Absolutely. So GoalSet is a family finance and financial education platform. So for any of your listeners out there who may have a kid's debit card for their kid, GoalSet allows your kid to have a debit card, but to have that debit card with financial education. And I'll tell you why. My mother was an elementary school teacher. I did everything in my house that had everything to do with education, right? You know how it is when you live in the house with a teacher, right? Everything you do is like count it, read it, right? Like everything is education.
I just want to watch TV.
Exactly. So because of her, I ended up going to Stanford. I got 2 degrees in engineering, so on a great track from an educational perspective. But I came out of Stanford, and there's one thing I didn't know about. I didn't know about money because my mama didn't teach me about money because she didn't know about money.
Right.
So I'm in my late 20s. I have a job in Silicon Valley. At that job, they give me a bunch of stock and stock options, and I don't know about diversification or asset allocation, so I just leave it there. I pick my head up one day. That stock is worth $1 million. But that was at the beginning of the day, because by the end of the day, the big tech bubble had burst and my $1 million went down to $20,000 in one day. That's what I said too.
My million went to 40.
See?
I
And
thought
so
about you, Stacey.
I didn't understand stock options.
because
Yeah.
you don't understand
Yeah.
options. You don't understand vesting and that you could sell them and that you could diversify. So in that moment, I thought, okay, this was stupid, but I can't turn back the hands of time. All I can do is make sure this doesn't happen to my own children. Fast forward, when I actually had my daughter, Gabrielle, I taught her everything I had since learned about personal finance from the time she came out of my womb. And when she was 8, about to turn 9, she said, Mommy, for my 9th birthday, I really only want 2 things. I said, what's that? She said, enough money to save for an investment account
Wow.
and a bike.
Could you
And I
imagine?
thought,
At that age, whew.
if I could get every child like you to say that, I can change the world. And so that's what GoalSetter is. We provide not just a debit card for your kids, because let's be honest, America teaches kids from the time that they are born how to send and spend money. We can
Right.
go to kids now and say, how many of you have Cash App? How many of you have Venmo? How many of you have sending and spending mechanisms? And they do. Excuse me. How many of you know about investment accounts? How many of you know what a bond is? How many of you know what a stock is? And they don't. And so that's what we do at GoalSetter. Our debit card actually comes with a rule called learn before you burn. So your kid's debit card will automatically freeze on Sunday morning if they haven't taken their financial literacy quiz for the weekend.
Ooh, I like that. I might need that for me. And while you were talking about all of those things, I was thinking about like me not having financial literacy when I was younger, and when I got my first bank account. And before we get to you, Stacey, do you guys all remember when you got your first ever bank account?
Absolutely.
I do. I remember it. I was so proud at the time. There was a program. I was going to school in East New York, but my mother had bused me to a school in Mill Base, which is PS 236. And what they did was they had given us. They set up bank accounts for us at that time. I felt so proud just to have a couple of $5 or something that was in it. It gave me a sense of pride to open up my first bank account. So I remember those days.
Absolutely. And I remember getting my first bank account because then I was like, oh, now I can get a job so I can put some money in that bank account, right? You associate a bank account with wealth and money, and that gives you the motivation. But, you know, a bank account and investing are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And that is what our community is lacking.
Yes.
Right.
That
No,
understanding
absolutely.
of how to build wealth, not just how to make money.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
now,
true.
Stacey, let's get to you. You remember your first time opening? Because that was my first foray into anything financial, like having a bank account. And it wasn't until I was in high school. And so that's why I remember it so well. I think I was like a junior in high school. And I didn't have much in there. But imagine not even having that. Then how was I going to be able to invest anything or learn about it? And so that was quite a journey for me.
Yeah.
And so, Stacey, now let's get over here to you. You know, this is my girl, Stacey, so I can't assume that everybody knows everything about her. But in your work, you've talked about financial behaviors developing at an early age, how messages from society impact our financial choices. Can you share some more insight about this? And also some of the barriers that exist, particularly in the Black community, and also because we like to be, you know, just always think about solution tips on how to overcome them.
Absolutely. And I think all of the questions you just answered are in my story. So I'll share my story just as you ladies have. A big aha moment for me when it came to money was when I was in college, and a friend of mine's father worked for a brokerage company called Payne Weber that will really date me. And we walked into, he was going to take us out to lunch one day, and I'd never been around Wall Street or anything like that. And we walked into his office, and I saw my first trading floor. And I was like, I have never seen anything like this before. And it was an incredible experience. I went back, I changed my major to business right away. Interned there, got a job right out of college at a commodities firm, and I was a cash manager and invested in the treasury markets. So I really learned how the economy worked and how the markets work within economy. Didn't want to stay on Wall Street, came out of the womb loving writing, and I called the Wall Street Journal and I said, I know finance, I love writing, and they actually bought that story. And they hired me, and I started at their newswire service, eventually moved to their television department, and I was there for 7 years. And it was just wonderful to see. Now I've seen the corporate side of money. So CBS was starting a business news division called Market Watch, and I got hired to be their first on-air reporter. And that was a journalist's dream because I had to do every single CBS show, from morning news to evening news, everything in between, radio. And that really brought me to Main Street. And I was at CBS for many years. And then I went to CNN Global, and I was really starting to have a lot of conflict about being a financial journalist, about doing this, the information we were putting out, and from working on Wall Street, because I could see that knowledge does not translate into behavior. And especially all the big financial gurus at the time, I'm not going to name any names, but really kind of making us feel bad. You're supposed to put this amount into retirement. You're supposed to do this. And I could see people can't do that. They don't do that. So why aren't we doing that? And I thought it was kind of a failure by the financial services industry and the financial media, the way they were giving financial advice. Journalist in me had to know why. Why do we do what we do when it comes with money? And I went on what I had no idea was going to be a 6-year research project into what drives financial behavior. Because of my career, I had access to the greatest minds in the world, psychologists. Don't remember Clinton Gore's addiction specialist, because that's, financial behavior, everything from my research. Problem became very clear. When we have trouble with money, we go straight to the numbers. I got to earn more, save more, invest more. The real causes of our financial behavior have got absolutely nothing to do with numbers. We make our choices based on our beliefs, and our beliefs are the result of things that have nothing to do with money. How we saw it handled growing up, social messages to live a certain lifestyle, have certain things, or you're not, whatever. Gender, culture, race, all of these form our beliefs about ourselves, and that's what drives our financial choices. So the dance becomes teaching people how to manage those choices and to become aware of what's really pushing their buttons so that at that moment they can say, oh, I can make a different choice. So I wrote a book about that, and it came out in 2008, and I hate to say it was good timing, but it was in a huge recession and a very emotional recession. And I started my book tour on the Today Show, and I think it just really resonated for people to hear about money spoken in that way. So that appearance turned into a 3-year gig. A lot of people watched that show. So the White House contacted me and asked me to create a behavior-based financial education system based on this holistic approach to money. Did that, and then went on to create my own financial education program. My journalism career continued. PBS, Black Enterprise, and one of my jobs right when I left Black Enterprise to start my own company, a show called The Breakfast Club asked me to come on and talk about Blacks and investing. And what I had seen, and I'll just never forget this, from the first time President Obama ran, when it became clear he was going to win in the weeks before his presidency, the number of Blacks going to sign up for financial literacy courses, going to sign up for entrepreneurship courses, going to sign up for advice, 10,000 tupled. So I love his saying, the audacity of hope. So the X factor was actually the hope. And I remember my first segment I did with Angela, and I was talking about the mentality in the Black community that you need to be rich to invest.
Right.
Totally understand where that comes from.
That's right.
And totally understand why we don't trust the financial markets, even though our story's told wrong and we are an incredible story of resilience. But now technology, fintech, is providing solutions that the government failed to. And guess what? It takes out that discrimination piece. And now it's micro investing was created, and now investing is accessible to everyone. I mentioned one company's name in that interview, and I'm not saying that company's name now. But while I was in that interview, 4 million people signed up for that company's app.
Amazing.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
then we saw our community does have an appetite for this type of information.
Right.
And they're hungry for it.
That's right.
And we're always told as lax, and at the bottom, talk to us from our position of power,
Exactly.
help us make empowered financial decisions.
That's
That's where the work has to go. So a holistic approach, people talk about behavioral finance or holistic approaches like there's something different. That's the only way to learn about money. You have to work on mindset and help people remember how strong they really are.
And go to trusted companies.
Yes.
For
companies
it too,
that believe in that.
Yeah.
That's true.
And also because, there's so many people out there that call themselves gurus and listen, that's why it's so important to have these platforms here where Mastercard's been doing this work. And so we're going to get to that. And thank you, Stacey, in a second. But Tanya, I want you to talk about your partnership with Mastercard over the years, and more specifically, the programming that you are doing and activating with HBCU students.
Absolutely. Well, the thing I love about Mastercard is that Mastercard is really focused on, through their Center for Inclusive Growth, they are focused on inclusivity. Mm-hmm. How do you include more people in the conversation and include more people in wealth building in ways that meet them where they are, to the point that Stacey just made, right? I know that there are folks sitting in classrooms across America where some banker comes across the street and is teaching them about the stock market. But that banker is 30 years older than them, doesn't speak their language, doesn't come from their community, and all of those kids have their heads down on their desk and are falling asleep.
Right.
It's not because they can't learn, it's because the teacher can't teach. And so, what
they can't relate.
They can't relate.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And sometimes they can't relate to the stories, they can't relate to the to the examples of what investing means or what investing will bring you and your family and your community. So all of that relatability is really important. All of that is to say, with Mastercard, we have just recently launched a financial freedom project with the HBCUs in the Atlanta area. And so Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, we have brought to them this financial freedom boot camp. So it's 10 sessions where we are for 20 to 30 minutes in every single session talking about a different financial concept that is the core of wealth building and that people need to know in order to build wealth, right? We just kicked off last week, incredibly exciting, had all these amazing AUC students in the room. And we start with questions like, who knows what the rule of 72 is? Nobody's raising their hand, and that's okay because we're about to share it with you. The rule of 72 teaches you how fast your money will double based on where you invest it. Mm-hmm. And so now after that 20-minute session, everyone says, wow, okay, so I just can't stick my money under a mattress or in a savings account that's going to yield me 0.1% interest. I need to do something better. So click, I got that, right? Then in the second session, we talk about, okay, great, now you know you need to do better. How do you do better? Where can you put your money where your money will have an opportunity to grow at 7% per year for the next 30 years? Oh, well, that's something called the stock market. Right. But I don't have to be a stock picker. I can learn about ETFs and mutual funds and index funds. So then we introduce that language and we tell them about that language. The reason all of this is so important is because we all know if you don't know the language of money, then anybody can sell you anything because you feel ashamed about not understanding the concepts and you just sit there and do what we all do, right? You go into the mortgage loan place and you just nod. They may have a really bad interest rate on that piece of paper, but you don't know what good is. And so we're teaching them the language of money, and we're also giving them the GoalSetter app. Mastercard is putting $100 onto these students' accounts so that before they graduate, they can be savers and investors. We are turning the next generation of AUC students from senders and spenders into savers and investors and giving them both the tools so that they can start investing and the knowledge to do so.
Oh, I love that. The confidence that comes with being able to know that you have that information too. I'm just now flashing back to the first time I had to do a mortgage and what that process was like for me.
Absolutely.
But
it's scary.
You got your confidence.
I did all my research ahead of time. So
it's interesting, and I'm glad you said that you did your research because I didn't. So when you said, it wasn't until you got older that you realized, okay, how do I understand about numbers and financing? We were talking before. I wish I had this goal set when I was younger, right?
Absolutely.
Because growing up, I wasn't taught that. That wasn't the behavior in my family for us to sit down at dinner to have those conversations and say, let's talk about savings, let's talk about investing.
We didn't talk about money in my house.
No, not at all.
It was like, don't open those bills because we can't do it. It was my mom, my dad being like, your mother spends all the money. And then my mom hiding packages so that he wouldn't see her going shopping and bringing them in the house.
It was all that.
Yeah.
And then those early impressions, that's what sets how you handle money. I remember my mother hiding stuff in the trunk so my father wouldn't see it. And so you grew up.
Now I walk my stuff right in the house. No.
I bought it. I paid
You
for it. I'm
ride
walking
it.
it in the house.
Well, it's interesting for me. I grew up as a figure skater, so I lived away from my parents and an athlete. And I always had that messaging, you just worry about what you're doing, we'll worry about the money. You just worry about what you're doing, we'll worry about the money. And as I got into my work, and I was like, oh. And I said, even in my adult behavior, as far as worrying about the details and getting into the nitty gritty, it's not natural to me, but you have to know yourself well enough to know your tendencies.
That's right.
And that's also a big part of about financial literacy, exactly what you were talking about, Nicole.
Exactly.
And, I'm so glad because we are going to get into this program more, but even just to piggyback off of what you said about a mortgage,
Yes.
I actually got my real estate license, but part of the reason I did that was because I had been doing these deals for myself in real estate, and I wanted to make sure I was as educated as possible on everything, on every aspect, so that when I was going in and meeting with brokers and going to get my mortgage and doing all of that, I understood it so well that nobody could really try to get over on me.
Right.
And it's just so much better when you can walk in there with the confidence of knowing that, I educated myself. That's why I love GoalSetter and the fact that you're saying, okay, you want to access this or you want to do this. Well, first you have to make sure you take this course.
That's right.
Yes.
And, it's information I think that kids will hold on to.
It's so cliche,
it's
but
so
knowledge
cliche.
is power.
It really is.
I
Yeah.
have to tell you, this is so funny because I have kids, right? And I see the impact that it has on
Right.
them. And my kids are from 8 all the way to 19. So my 14-year-old, I picked him up from basketball practice the other day, and his friend got in the back seat with him, and he said, Miss Tanya, did Hendrix tell you that when we are in the line at Chick-fil-A, he's always trying to hurry up and finish his quiz so that
You can access and get some.
so that his debit card can get unlocked before he gets to the front of the line. Right? So that's on one side. And then on the other side, I have my 19-year-old daughter. When she turned 18, because she had been taking these quizzes for many years, she called me up and she said, Mommy, I'm 18 now. I think I need to pull my credit score, but I probably don't have a credit score yet because I don't have a credit card. So I'm going to go get a credit card so I can build my credit. I need to go get a Roth IRA, and I need to open up a high yield savings account. Anything else, Mommy? And it was because she'd been taking these weekly financial
You were so
education
proud,
classes.
too.
Exactly. It was like a proud mommy moment.
Yes, but that is the difference. And as we talk about creating products for our community, right? I'm one of the very few Black women in America who owns a fintech company and an ed tech company. And so our company looks very different and acts very different than a standard debit card that you stick into kids' hands.
Right.
Because I know I'm not going to do that disservice to my children, nor to any of the other children in our community, of just teaching them how to spend money without the other side, which is learning about building your credit, learning about investing, learning about saving. So it's great that they learn how to be responsible spenders, but we all know that being a responsible spender is not going to make you rich.
That is definitely not.
That is not.
You can't be living check to check.
Check to
That's
check.
right. You cannot do that. And so, that having Black people and Black women who are bringing a different lens to how we create products for our community is essential. And that's the other thing that, quite frankly, Mastercard has done by being an investor in GoalSetter.
Right.
Mastercard has powered us to do this work in a way that other people, quite frankly, can't do it because they come with a very different lens.
Well, Nicole, I have a question for you now. All right. We've talked about the Mastercard Start Path program and how it helps early stage, underrepresented founders a bit on previous episodes. Why is it important to invest in underrepresented startups? And how is this beneficial to Mastercard's overarching financial inclusion strategy?
Sure, of course. Love that question, Angela. And first, you so eloquently talked about the work that we do holistically as one of our Start Path, right, partners. When we think about Start Path, when we think about connecting with some of those fintech startups, those education startups, it's helping us connect with the community, empower with the community on a broader scale. And some of those digital products, although I call it inclusive products that we have, is helping us say, how do we touch everyone and have equal access to everyone? And so I just want to take us back for a little bit. In 2006, right, Mastercard Foundation was founded. In 2015, we made a commitment to connect 500 million people to the digital economy. Since then, we've exceeded that goal. And what we wanted to do is say, how can we have 1 billion people by 2025? How do we connect? Well, we also said, let's push our goals a little bit further. We want to connect with 50 million small business owners, 1 billion underserved individuals, but also 25 million women entrepreneurs. Now, think about this Start Path program and what it can do when you connect these entrepreneurs and these fintechs together to create these digital products that can help our communities more broadly. We're in the digital age right now. So I mentioned earlier, how do we close that gap? And so some of the partners and the products that we have GoalSetters, we have Wealthy, we have Summa, right? There's different fintech organizations and products that we have that's out there that not only if you think about, can I access it, but also can I see individuals who look like me, who are teaching me and educating me on these products holistically.
Fintech is really the game changer.
Yeah.
Yes.
It really,
Staceys we've been talking about
We've
that.
been talking about fintech for a long time, and it was really wonderful to see post-2020, the Black community, when everybody was locked down and we saw how bad things really were, really, it was like there was a collective decision. The traditional economy was not made for us. It does not work for us. And we migrated to the digital economy, and it was explosive. And then you saw, for the last, I think, 3 years in a row, the largest number of first-time investors to the stock market are Black. It's because of fintech.
Yes.
And we've been on Wealth Wednesdays. We've been just raising that fintech, ringing that fintech bell for a year. So that's, just Mastercard, I really applaud you on what you've really been a pioneer and a leader in this.
Yeah, we have to walk the talk, right? We can't, in order for us to be effective in our business, it's the authenticity around it, but it's the commitment as well. And it's not for the short term, it's for the long term gain for us, for our communities. Where we're at as an organization, where we put our money at, our businesses or our locations, but it's also important to affect the communities at large.
Well, let's talk about some of those locations. Let's talk about Mastercard's tech hubs and all of those things. My main thing when we started these conversations was for people to have real tangibles and to see how can I access this for what I do and where do I need to be, and how can this benefit me? What are the different programs based on where I'm at in my business? So can you just give us some insights into that?
So when we think about Mastercard Global Technology Hub, so they represent almost 40% of Mastercard's employees in these locations around the world. We believe in the locations where we're at. So we're in New York City, St. Louis, and I'll just talk about those two locations for starters. And then also we have work that we do in Atlanta as well. When we think about the locations of where our physical presence is, we also understand the commitment in partnering with not-for-profits, government agencies on a community basis as well. So our tech hubs unite diverse talent from software engineers, fintechs, you name it. In those tech hubs, all those creative and innovative products that we're creating or producing and developing, those inclusive products, they happen and they're developed at the tech hubs that I manage. And so looking at the people that we bring on board, but then also what are some of the programs that run out of these tech hubs? So we have Master Your Cards. Not only are they run at the tech hubs, but they also in the community because we want to meet people where they're at. They could be online, they could be virtual. And we had an activation at Clark Atlanta University in ensuring that how do we reach not only students as well, but how do we reach adults for them to understand the inclusivity around financial education and financial literacy. And so the broadened aspect of where we're at and the continuation is yes, it's U.S., but also global in nature.
Man, I love that because I feel like nowadays kids are also teaching their parents.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
That reverse mentoring,
goodness.
big time.
Okay, I just have to jump in and say to that point, Mastercard just recently did a research study about GoalSetter users. Let me tell you what they found. 85% of parents said their kids are better savers because they use GoalSetter. 1 out of 2 parents said their kids are better investors because they use GoalSetter. But 75% of parents said they are more financially healthy themselves because their kid is using GoalSetter.
Yeah.
And 30% of parents said they are using a different financial instrument or investment vehicle that they learned about on GoalSetter.
Oh my God. See, this is a generational,
It is generational.
100%. So when you said the kids are teaching the parents,
Yes.
we never got, how many of you all got financial education
Not
in
at
high
all.
school?
No.
Not at all.
And in college, all I did was sign up for things I shouldn't have.
Absolutely.
But one thing I want to say is we're also doing something like for the STEM, right? For girls for tech, Black girls who code.
Yes.
Because again, how do you touch that demographic
Right.
and those students in that age? And it is that reverse mentoring and educating their parents.
Yep.
That's something that was never the case for us. Think about the impact that we're doing right now.
That's right.
So sometimes we say we worried about the future. I'm not.
Oh, it's when I told you when I came on the show the first time and I mentioned that technology company for micro investing.
Yeah.
Who told me about that company?
Your
My
son.
son.
Your son.
Your son.
You told me that.
Yeah.
Your son.
Wow.
Like, this is what I'm using. I want to ask you guys all something because the other day, my friend's son, he's 14 years old, and he wasn't there, and I was with his son. We were just having a conversation because he said he's interested in real estate. He's in high school, and he says to me, my biggest fear is that one day I could be homeless. And I don't know why he said that, because his family, they're good. He lives in a house. It's not like there's ever been that. But I do feel like a lot of times people have this fear. I know I used to always have this fear, like, what if something happens? What if I don't have a place to live? What if I'm not set up properly? And I really did used to think that when I was living check to check, and not even check to check, until I got myself in a better position. But let's say a 14-year-old came to you today and was like, look, this is my biggest fear, that one day I'll be homeless. What would your answer be to that child?
My answer to that child would be, you can eliminate that fear by managing your finances appropriately, and we're going to teach you how to. Most of us, because we don't talk about money in our families, as we all just talked about, it's scary. And of course that could be your biggest fear, because that money is a black box and it's an unknown. But if somebody sits down with you and says, okay, the day you get your first paycheck, let me tell you what we're going to do. Yeah. We're going to start putting away at least 20% out of every paycheck until you have an emergency fund. That emergency fund will be 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So if you get fired from your job, don't worry about it. You got 3 to 6 months that you can live on right there. And then after you're done with the emergency fund, the next dollar, we're going to start investing that. You aren't a stock picker. You don't need to be a stock picker like Stacey over here, right? You don't have to be a stock picker like Stacey. You can invest your money in a mutual fund or an ETF, and here's how you do it. And this is what it's done for the last 30 years. If you invest $100,000, in 30 years, it'll be $761,000 if you put it into the stock market, and the stock market returns what it always has. When they see a path,
right,
then it's like, after I was pregnant with my second child, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got all this weight on me that I need to get off. All I needed to do was go to a boot camp, and somebody need to show me, okay, you jump that rope 100 times and then you run around. We have to give them a path to get them away from that fear. And if we give them a path, then they can see what their lives can look like.
And what's the gold, and what you just said, your relationship with money can teach you how to manage fear.
Yes.
And it's manage fear. It's not real.
That's right.
And we can show you how those fears aren't going to come true. And that's what's so powerful about all of it, is really unpacking your relationship with money can teach you how to manage fear and how to not let it run the show.
Absolutely.
I agree. And it goes back to what you were saying, is you have to show them. Yeah. Because sometimes we can have conversations with those 14-year-olds, and if we're talking at them without having conversations with them to bring them in and give them relevant examples, you can't see it. You can't be it.
Right.
That's
right?
blinding, It's
blinding, right? And so it goes back to fundamental, each one teach one. If each one is going to teach one, then let's make sure we have that step-by-step process, and I'm bringing you along the journey. I'm not trying to kick you to the side at all.
And don't you love when they see, and that's what was so eye-opening on Wall Street, because it was like, ooh, Wall Street, this, that. I didn't meet a single rocket scientist on Wall Street, nor is money rocket science. It's not hard. It's fear.
It's fear.
It's fear.
So it's the mental, what you're saying.
And
If I
that's
get
what's
to
so
your
great
mental,
about GoalSet, or what Mastercard's doing. When they start, they're like, oh, that's easy. Rule of 72, all that stuff's easy.
Exactly.
That's right. And then we need to show them Angela Yee and her mini businesses. So we're going to reframe his fear. His fear is going to be like, oh no, I might only have 2 houses as opposed to 3. Right? If he can see what's possible and start to set up his goals, then he reframes what his goals are. My goal is not to not be homeless. My goal is to have 3 houses and 2 businesses and this and that, right?
Be careful with the Yee effect. My son has grown up around her in this, and she's created a financial nightmare. Why don't we have 10 houses?
No, one thing I did show him, though, was I showed him like the first brownstone that I ever bought.
Yes.
And I showed him what I paid for it and what it's worth now. And also that it was a 2-family. So I was like, this is what my mortgage was. And then I had a tenant downstairs that was paying this much money. So really, this is what I was paying every month. And so I actually showed him that so he could see what it is. And the brownstone that I purchased recently, I was showing him, all of that. So he's like, now he wants to be an architect.
I love that. He is ready. He probably wants to be your architect.
Your architect,
He's like,
exactly.
Your architect.
As long as I get a discount. Right.
She's like, where's the hookup?
And listen, one of the things that people ask me all the time, if I could go back to my younger self and do things differently, what would it be? And I always say, I wish I would have started investing earlier. Because I think that when I first was, like I said, living check to check, I wasn't investing. And it wasn't until I was like 29 years old that I started a Roth IRA. And I got a lot more confident. And it didn't have to be a lot of money that I was putting in it every month. So that was just something that if I could have seen exponentially how that could have grown, and if I would have started that at a way younger age, where I would be now, if I could go back in time and do things differently, I would have.
I agree with you.
That's such a good point you made. So many people think, well, I don't have the money to start one. You don't need that much.
Put a little $50 in.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something that we're talking about a lot lately is a lot of this is systemic. Like what we were talking about, people not understanding like their work benefits and things like that. Companies aren't educating people. Companies have the power to offer all sorts of benefits. I'm so glad so many are now focused on financial wellness. Systemic discrimination put us in this place. It's going to take systemic solutions to pull us out of this, really help from companies. So Master, you are walking the walk.
I love it. And that's what I love about
You
working
are really
at
walking
Mastercard
the
and
walk.
the work that we do holistically to enhance, right, and educate the communities across the board to give access to everyone. For
we
me,
have
there's
plans
nothing
for
better
you.
than that.
Yeah. And some of that is on us too, right? To go out and seek this information and this knowledge, because
That's true.
There are, like you said, Mastercard, you have these programs that are available. And I do want to ask you, Tanya, how did you end up even approaching, or did they approach you?
To get
For
with
GoalSet,
Mastercard,
yeah.
So I applied to the Start Path program.
Okay.
And
Can I tell the story?
Yes,
before?
you can tell the story.
Yeah, I want to hear this story
because
because I want people to see how it can happen. It wasn't like you had it in, I knew this person, it was a hookup.
We were at a conference one time, and I remember her walking up to me and was like, "Oh, you work at Mastercard? Well, this is my business, and this is what it is that I do. I'm going to partner and work with you. I want to give me some names, right?" And so the way that she is now, this is a long time ago, the way that she is now, she's the same. Meaning I'm driven, I'm focused, I believe in myself,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And I believe in my product.
Yes.
And guess what happened? And now we're partners.
Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that.
And is that the same story? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
And then she applied.
And it is true. I mean, but what I have found is God doesn't put you in any place where you are not supposed to be, but it is up to us to take advantage of every one of those moments.
Free will.
That's
Networking
Yeah.
and free will.
Networking is so important.
Yes.
And there are times, nobody will believe this. I sit on the line between being an introvert and an extrovert. So there are some days where I walk into a room of 1,000 people and my introvert side is screaming out like, "Oh Lord, I just want to be at home. I just want to be at home," right? But in those moments, I say to myself, I am not leaving here until I have talked to five people who can move this business forward. And the reason is because I am so committed to transforming our community. And I know, we've raised $30 million. We've raised money from Mastercard, but also from Robert F. Smith, the chairman and philanthropist of Vista Equity, from Kevin Durant, from Chris Paul, from Carmelo Anthony. We have extraordinary investors who believe in GoalSetter, but they believe in GoalSetter's power to transform the next generation of kids in our community. And so it is my responsibility. Every when I took one of those investment dollars, it's my responsibility to go up to folks like Nicole and make sure that I am getting the kinds of partnerships that can help GoalSetter to get in the hands of more kids across America. So, yes, I may have been a little aggressive, but know that
It worked out.
It worked
That's
out.
for the babies.
Because that excitement can translate. And let me ask you this: did GoalSetter start off when you first launched it? Right. I want to know also about how it morphed, because a lot of times you have an idea, you start something, but then you end up kind of having to adapt it to what you see is necessary, is needed.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we realized is that not only did families and kids need our product, but banks and financial institutions need our product. And so GoalSetter is now white labeling our platform for banks and credit unions across the country so that they can give our platform to all of the families that they serve. So that's been a huge part of our pivot. The second thing has been that we're actually serving school systems now. Right. So we have GoalSetter, both the app and financial education curriculum in 10 states across the country, in 25 school systems throughout the country. We partnered with Nike and UBS and other financial institutions to help bring this content and this curriculum into school systems that need it most. So those are the two of the things that we have done to make sure that we are getting out there and really meeting the need.
Ooh. And Nicole, it has to feel great for you to be doing this work that obviously is something.
You see I'm beaming, right?
Yeah, you are. You're like, talk, let's go.
It is. I mean, when you realize that you work for, I work at Mastercard, I understand that the work that we do, and I'm touching the communities, and I can see that trifecta of education, financial literacy, the community involvement, community development. When you witness that, and then you also turn it into what are some of the products that we're doing, and we're touching generations, we're touching communities. For me, it's something that I will continue to beam with pride, and what it is that what we do in working with our community partners, with our fintechs, with our startups is key. Yeah.
All right. Well, Stacey, Stacey's with me every single week on Wealth Wednesdays, but honestly, when I go out and about, people always approach me and talk about how helpful our platform has been with Wealth Wednesdays. And then now they're coming up to me and talking about these priceless conversations with Mastercard also. Yes. And so that means a lot to me, just for me to have this platform to be able to give people this valuable information, give people a place that they can go to get the assistance that they need when they're at that point that they're like, okay, I'm ready to bring my business to the next level, or I can speak confidently on what it is that I have going on, or maybe I need to learn how to speak confidently, because that's not always something that's a given either.
Not at all.
Being able to pitch, being able to
it was
speak
so
to your product.
interesting to hear you talk about. That was a little entrepreneurship 101, and I hear the partnerships and the investors and things that you made. How did you do that?
Wow. I'm like, whoo, it was a long journey. And truly how I did it is meeting good people, telling them what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? It is often the why behind your product, not just the product that you're offering, that gets people engaged and wants them and makes them want to help you. Right. So getting good people into our ecosystem, and truly, I'm not even kidding you, asking each person, can you just introduce me to one person? And then that next person, can you just introduce me to one person? I mean, that is what networking is. You don't go to someone and say, Angela, can you introduce me to all 5 of the people who were on your show last week? Right? Angela's going to be like, no, I have other things to do.
I'll be like, Dan, can you take this email?
Exactly.
Literally.
Dan's like.
But, when you are doing the work and you're doing the work for the right reasons, and then you get people engaged in that work, they do want to help you and they are willing to help you. And so that's how we were able to get it done, just one by one by one. But that's why it's been, this work is not for the faint of heart. Being an entrepreneur, it is not for the faint of heart.
You'll hear a lot of no's before you get to a yes.
A whole lot of no's before you get to a yes. And the funny thing about me is I didn't come from the fintech space. I didn't come from the finance space. I actually was at Nickelodeon. I ran nickjr.com and noggin.com before I came over into this space. But I knew that if I could bring all my skills of making content and making fintech products fun and engaging, then I could bring that into the financial services space and transform the space in a way that no one else had done. Mm-hmm. And when Angela was talking about, she had a 2-family brownstone, I thought about one of our videos. It's called Get a Renter to Pay Your Mortgage. Right? And so those are the kinds of videos. They're fun. They're engaging. We have one that's called Life Insurance Isn't Just for Dead People.
Right to the point.
It's true.
It's true, right? And so we have all this great content because I came from the content space.
Absolutely.
And brought that over into the financial services space, which is why GoalSetter can bring this content to people in a way that makes y'all laugh and is fun and engaging, but is still informative.
Do you have one about creating a trust? Or
Yes, we do have one about creating a trust. Yes. Wills, trust.
Special needs trust, in case you have kids that have special needs. That's important as well.
That is very important.
First, I want to say just thank you for the opportunity for Mastercard for even having us to have the opportunity to amplify our message and the work that we do in this space. I think you heard from some of our partners that joined you previously. You had Troy Dennis, you had Salah Goss, and definitely for the work that they do holistically. So I just want to give them a shout out. But thank you. I think that when you have the masses that can hear the wealth content, what it is that we can do holistically, and what some of the tools and resources that you can educate, right, and learn from. I just think that this is a fantastic platform for us just to share and amplify a message. So thank you.
Well, thank you. This means a lot to me. So I appreciate you all for being here with us today. I know our audience on Way Up appreciates this too. We're going to get our investments way up.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And again, this is priceless, this information. So now what are you going to do? That's the question, for everybody listening. What are you going to do? It's time to take some action. But thank you so much for joining us. And I know this is going to be amazing. And I cannot wait to hear some of the success stories from people who are just listening and are inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm inspired because, I'm already like, okay, in solidarity, what am I doing?
Start path.
That's right. That's right.
We're not
Master
letting
your
you two
card.
leave this
Yep.
building. We have a lot of plans.
I love
Y'all
it.
did great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.